Now, recently we just had another interview with Nurse Angela, and she was breaking down the video with Dr. Susan Moore, and she's been definitely a great voice to fight for healthcare workers within the black community of what they go through. And basically, in this story of what happened to Dr. Ben Danielson at the Seattle Children's Hospital, we're going to mirror everything that Nurse Angela was talking about. And he's a doctor, okay? Now, you know, they don't respect black people, period. Whether you're a doctor, nurse practitioner, you know, whatever you are. They date physician's assistant. This country does not have a respect for black people. And you remember Nurse Angela said that industry is mostly saturated by Mzungus. There's not a lot of black doctors out there, not a lot of black nurses, which is very, very tragic. And we are affected by that. Now, you remember a video Vicky Dillard had posted here, and shout out to Sister Vicky, of a nurse throwing up a white supremacist hand sign while she was in her clothes working in a COVID unit. So imagine the kind of care black people was getting then. But let's continue, because this medical racism needs to be highlighted. And before we get into this, if you are a healthcare worker and if you dealt with medical racism and you want to expose it and talk about it, maybe on camera, or you may say, I don't want to do it on camera. Can I just do it by voice? You know, we have a podcast for that as well. Reach out to us and let us know, because we need to have more black healthcare workers come out and expose this system, because Nurse Angela can't just do it by herself. But if many of you who are dealing with it, I'm getting emails from some of you who saying that you have been through the same things that Nurse Angela has told us about. Email us, let us know. We would love to talk with you and start exposing this system for what it is, because the police is always highlighted on, but those people in those hospitals do a lot more damage at times than even what the police is doing on the streets. Under medicating black people, not giving us the right diagnosis. You have sometimes literally open white supremacists treating you. No, we need to have that exposed. Are you being treated bad in a hospital? Let's expose these hospitals so we can tell our people don't go there. Now, this particular brother, he was a medical director actually at the Odessa Brown Children's Clinic. So he said that he felt marginalized and alone as the rare black voice in a position of authority. So he said Seattle Children's would gladly place Odessa Brown, which serves mostly low-income people, it said, on a pedestal to raise money. He said, but would not show the same level of interest when it comes to daily care. Yeah, let me prop up this brother as his black face so we can get that money, maybe some of that philanthropy money that comes from the Mzungus. Say, oh, you know, I would like to do something for the poor black kids or the poor non-white kids. So let me give to this hospital. It's all game, ladies and gentlemen. That's why when you have Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the movement, the organization, they dumped billions of dollars into the organization, but behind the scenes, all that money really went back to the Mzungus. It didn't go to us. So that's a constant game. They'll front a black face, they'll put them in the media, but when the money exchange hands, it's not going back to the black community. So we got to understand the games that they play and the tactics. So he says that going along with the national reckoning with racism, he said the hospital executives would offer symbolic gestures of equity, but take little action toward righting its own wrongs and those who of the broader medical system, he said. He said, particularly around the lack of translation services and the frequency of which security was being called on patients of color, according to what he's saying. So, you know, they'll call you combative if you say, hey, I need, you know, this pain medication. Or they may say you combative if you say, well, I don't want to take that vaccine. Don't stick me with that. There was a story we covered a while back where this sister was like, don't give my baby that medication. I don't want that. And they literally called the police on her in there and acting like she was combative by saying she didn't want her baby to have something. This is what's happening to black people. That's why black people for years always say, I don't trust them doctors. I don't know about going to the hospital. That's why, but that's also dangerous for us as a people, because we do need to go to the doctor. We do need to have our checkups, right? Sometimes you can catch things. So it's not good. This is why we have to push for all of our doctors to be black within our community. And if not, we need more of y'all to go to school to become a doctor, because that is a major need. Now, the brother said a lot of times he felt scared to speak out about racism for fear of retaliation by upper management. See, that fear got to go, brothers and sisters. Only thing they can do is fire you. And please let them fire you after you caught them being racist. Listen, catch them on camera saying racist things. Please catch them. If you know they talk like that, don't leave. Catch them. Get them on camera. And then then after you get them on camera and you got evidence, start speaking up. And if they retaliate, say something to them. And then put it out on social media. And also file discrimination suits. Don't be afraid to speak up from these people. You went to college all those years to get a degree. You got a license, medical, license as a doctor. You got your nurse's license. You're a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant. What are you afraid for? Forget that hospital that you're working in. You know how many more hospitals you can go to in your state that really need people? I haven't found every hospital so staffed up they don't need nobody. Forget that. The reason why it goes on, the reason why black folks are suffering is because those you brothers and sisters are suffering in silence. Nurse Angela has taken the stand to start exposing it. You need to get involved with that as well so you could change the system. So you can get the white supremacists out of these systems. Those white supremacists shouldn't be in those positions. But as long as you guys are staying silent, and ladies, staying silent is going to continue. So he says that the brother, that's the doctor, said that he heard hospital administration had used the N-word several years ago and the early references to him. He said, and they also referring to Asian people as slurs as well. And he's still, the person who's doing all this still remains a front-facing member of the team. And he says that he was getting concerned about whether Odessa Brown was getting all it needed to stay safe during the pandemic. He said in one instance, management told the family they could come to the clinic without wearing masks, without seeking Danielson's input. Now, you know good and well that's a no-no. Going to a hospital anywhere right now without a mask. And let me stop there for a minute. I saw the footage out of Atlanta. What the hell wrong with y'all in Atlanta? Y'all looking for a COVID outbreak. What's wrong? Y'all not wearing no mask at all? If y'all have a major COVID outbreak, that's Keisha Lance Bottoms' fault and the city council's fault. And the most of y'all black folks is over there in Atlanta. I saw all that footage of that. Y'all like no pandemic going on. I know Zonique told me that. T.I.'s daughter, when I did an interview with her, she told me. But to actually see that footage of that, y'all walk around with no mask and nothing going on. I guess y'all just waiting for it to happen. That is so asinine to walk around in a pandemic with no mask on. Look, them Trump folks, we already know what they own. I'm talking about black folk. And Atlanta is mostly a lot of us. Start wearing your mask, folks. So the brother said that because of that, he recognized they wasn't treating black people as they should. So he said in November, he abruptly resigned in protest, ending his tenure at the establishment. He said it has been revered in the black community since the 1970s. He said the brother said the most painful sacrifice to leave behind the clinic he loves to this day. He said, but treating the individual must go alongside treating the system. He said, I've had privilege enough that he said, it should be somebody who says this is not okay. He said, I'm privileged enough to know that this children's hospital is not a unique organization, that these are the same kinds of ills that many institutions have baked into their systems. And I understand whatever I whine about personally in experiences I've had around leaders using hate speech and racial language relating to me. The experiences of low-income people, he said, are still miles worse than what I have experienced. Now, he says that the institution is replete with racism and a disregard for people who don't look like them in the leadership. Translation, the brother says you have white supremacists in the leadership. And when I use the word white supremacist, let me tell you something. See, some of these people try to think a white supremacist is a Proud Boy. No. Or KKK or skinhead. If you're using the N-word, you're a white supremacist because that's how they speak. That's their language. When you're using stereotypes, treating black people less than, or anyone else less than you, because you feel superior to them because of your skin color, you are a white supremacist, period. You own the team. You're just not in the streets like white supremacist extremists. Like the Proud Boys and the rest of them are extremists. You just a regular one, white supremacist. And y'all are everywhere. So don't come to me talking about, well, how do you know they're white supremacists? Using the N-word, you're white supremacists. And that's how we're labeling you. We're telling you you're white supremacists. Because regular people don't use that kind of language to describe people. They don't. And for sure, they don't take advantage of people who's hurting, who need medical care to enact a racist agenda. Only white supremacists do that. They look to weaponize the medical system to harm black people. That's their thought processes, right? Remember, white supremacists have said if any of their people get COVID, to go around coughing around black folk so they can spread a pandemic, weaponizing a deadly virus. That was a medical way, right, of doing it. So they came out, they made a statement, of course, saying, well, some of the claims were investigated a decade ago. It said, we're examining the issues raised. It said, as an organization, we're committed to racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. When they use that word diversity and inclusion, because let me tell y'all something, I'm going to war about that terms diversity and inclusion, because diversity and inclusion doesn't empower black people whatsoever. It gives token jobs to a few black people while the rest of us are left out in the cold. The only thing that's going to benefit black people is control, ownership, and once we control and own different institutions, businesses, etc., we protect it, because if we don't protect it, someone can come in and get it. And with that protection also comes with community support. If we're not doing those four things I'm talking about, control, ownership, protection, and community support, we're not doing black empowerment. Diversity and inclusion does not benefit black folk. I know some of you brothers and sisters out there are diversity and inclusion hires, or maybe some of you are in that diversity and inclusion department. How many black folks do you actually bring in a year in your diversity and inclusion department? And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 or 3. Count how many Mzungus are hired a year versus how many black folks in your diversity and inclusion department you can actually bring in. How many black folks are the CEOs? How many black folks are on the board? Is half of the board black? Is a quarter of the board black? You understand? Diversity and inclusion does not benefit us. It is a failed policy. And it's failed because I have looked at the years upon years this policy has been enacted and it has not helped. If they were so-called serious about diversity and inclusion, black folks would be at the top on the board. Black folks would be more CEOs. Black folks would be more upper level management. Black folks would be, all over the place. Understand? You'll have a hospital in a black community and the majority of the staff are Mzungu. What the hell is that about? Why isn't the staff look like the community, majority black? That's the stuff I'm talking about. So when you hear the words diversity and inclusion, like you hear the word minority now and people of color now, and your ears perk up, say, wait a minute, that doesn't mean black people. Then diversity and inclusion doesn't mean anything good for us. So I just want you to pay attention to the words they use. Okay? So continuing. So it says that they claim to be holding themselves accountable and continue to do the work while they're required to address systemic racism and say when it exists. Listen, a brother not going to leave his job after all those years and say I painfully left this job if nothing was going on. Y'all just do better just to be quiet. Matter of fact, y'all done better just to actually talk with the brother, address those issues, fire those people. And if he's been with the hospital so long, why isn't he on the board? Now, this brother, they said, was one of the most respected figures in Seattle. That's what they said. When he became, the position he did receive back in 1999. He was labeled as Seattle's Municipal League Citizen of the Year. He had many awards in the city of Seattle. Okay. So, the CEO, he made a statement and all that. This is what I'm saying here. The brother wouldn't have left his position. He said it was painful for him to do that. Of course it was, because he cares about his community. But it was just so bad that he just couldn't deal with it anymore. And it's like I said, medical racism is real. So once again, you brothers and sisters that are doctors, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, nurses, licensed nurses, whatever different classification that you are, and you have dealt with the racism, you need to expose it. Hey, message us, because if we don't do nothing about this, they're going to continue to hurt and harm black people, in these institutions. But leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the situation with this brother. And like I said, Nurse Angela, like I said, she just was giving the game on all of this. Like I said, it's just verbatim what she talks about in the interviews that we've conducted with her.